I am so excited to announce that I have partnered with Magimix for season 9 of the Crazy Sexy Food podcast. Magimix is a family-owned business that has the amazing reputation as makers of quality kitchen appliances that are adored by chefs and home cooks alike. I remember growing up and always seeing my mum's beloved Magimix on her countertop and the utter ease of how she used it. With their 30-year motor guarantee, these machines have always been built to last. They continue to be relevant as ever in the busy kitchen and make fantastic food processors that make your food go further and reduce food wastage. They are a godsend when it comes to batch cooking and using up leftovers. I use my Magimix every day. If you're ready to step into the world of Magimix with a new food processor, blender, ice cream maker, or any other bit of kit, then simply pop over to their website and use my exclusive code at checkout for a 15% discount. The code is MMCSF9. Don't forget to download the Magimix app, which is full of recipes, tips, and tricks. Make it with Magimix. Hi, and welcome to the Crazy Sexy Food podcast. I'm Hannah Harley-Young. This show is all about the love of food and how it plays a part in our lives. I sit down with well-known personalities, food experts, chefs, and people who, well, just love their food, to find out all about their life, career, and their favourite tastes along the way. My guest today is Michelin-starred chef Paul Ainsworth. Having risen the ranks through some of the most well-known restaurants, working under some of the most famous chefs of our time, Paul finally went on to take over No6 Padstow in 2009 and won his Michelin star in 2013. Since then, he has restored and runs Padstow Townhouse, a 6-bedroom boutique hotel. He reopened the Mariners Public House in Rock in 2019. He and his wife, Emma, opened Cafe Reggiano by Paul Ainsworth in 2020. And in 2021, he launched a food and music festival that toured around Cornwall. The man doesn't stop. I'm lucky he's managed to stop by for a chat. Paul, I'm so happy to have you on. Welcome to Crazy Sexy Food.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. What an intro.
Well, I know it makes
you.
everyone feel a little bit like, oh, I don't know what to do with myself. But, take pride in all these incredible achievements. You've done a lot, and we're going to get into that. Before I start everything, I need to ask, what did you have for breakfast this morning?
I'm
going right in.
I'm just going to say it as it is.
Do
and be
it.
Really
Go
honest.
on.
I'm actually intermittent fasting.
Good for you.
And I'm really, really enjoying it.
Okay.
So my first meal today was actually when I got to London, and it was some chicken, halloumi, avocado salad thing at the hotel. But yeah, do you know what? I've been doing it now for about 2 months and really into it.
I mean, I sort of do it as well, but naturally, because I'm not hungry first thing in the morning, and I like to go to the gym and do my thing. But I just feel, especially with being in the food world, we eat, we get to eat at nice places. We're always, I'm sure with you, grazing, snacking, trying things. There needs to be some control somewhere, right? Yeah. And I feel like that's the only way that we can really get it. Yeah,
I mean, I'm 43 now, and I sort of went for a bit of a big MOT a few months ago, and my daughter Cece, and sort of like longevity and all of those things. So it's kind of, I wasn't sort of told, you're poorly or you've got this, but just a few changes needed to happen, and hospitality in my industry is brilliant, but I'm certainly guilty of out lots of coffee all day, and then sort of will eat quite late. And I've done that for so many years, and there comes a point where I don't want to get to the point where I then really have to do something about it. So I'm just trying to make some lifestyle changes, and I'm really getting on well with this, because you don't really have to think about it.
No, exactly. So we must talk, Paul, about the first time you and I met, which was earlier this year. You crowned me the Pancake Queen 2023. It was a Hexclad event, which I know you are an ambassador of. Do you want to talk about what happened, or shall I? I just need to let the world know
Yeah,
about
I think
this
we should let
huge
the world
recognition
know.
of mine.
You made like this kind of triple, quadruple stack pancake, but in all seriousness, you just got the basics right and just put things that work well together.
I don't know if you knew this at the time, but I was actually very hungover that morning.
Right.
And essentially, you had asked all of us at the event to create a stack of pancakes and then put whatever we wanted on them, and you would sort of crown the winner, or so to speak. And I made a sort of triple stack, and then in between each pancake was some crispy bacon, some crumbled cheddar, maple syrup, and I made it like a hamburger. And I thought it was like the perfect hangover cure.
Yeah.
And I think your reaction pretty much agreed.
Yeah. So essentially you were making it for yourself.
Absolutely.
Because that's what you were craving. But it was exactly that. It was that kind of salty, sweet, savouriness. The pancakes were lovely and fluffy.
Yeah.
It was a job well done, Hannah. It was brilliant.
Honestly, it really meant a lot to me, I must say. So I want to take it back. I want to talk about your childhood. You were born and raised in Southampton. What was life growing up? Who was cooking? I know you do come from a hospitality world. Just kind of tell us about your childhood.
Yeah, both mum and dad were cooking, and I was born into, a loving family. I had an amazing childhood. I'm really, really grateful and, thankful for that. And what I mean by that is just the normal things, just the things like, mum and dad who, unfortunately I lost my dad in 2015, but my mum and dad were together for, for the full 39 years.
Wow.
And, my dad was strict. He was, really, really sort of a disciplinarian, really put a work ethic into me, which, for myself, it really paid dividend later on. And my mum was from the Seychelles. My dad, my dad was born and bred just outside Blackpool. So quite sort of two contrasting.
Where did they meet?
So my dad worked for a company, Cable and Wireless. So he spent a lot of time in the Middle East in the 70s. So sort of those very early stages of all that infrastructure going into Dubai and everything when it was just a desert.
Yeah.
And then he got posted to the Seychelles. And one of those really romantic stories, he'd never heard of it, hadn't a clue where the Seychelles was. Came home from work. My mum and dad, my gran and granddad had some friends round, and one of them was in the Navy and had just got back from the Seychelles. And he was like, "You've got to go." He was like, "It's absolute paradise. You have to go. You'll absolutely love it." And he was there a month. Walked into Barclays International to post some money back to my grandparents, and there was my mum.
Oh,
and that was it.
I love that.
Yeah, and then he was always working abroad because his sort of dream was to open that their like a bed and breakfast. My mum, long story short, she moved back to the UK, and he then went abroad again to the Middle East. And now, when you think about these now, like my mum's moved over, she's staying with my grandparents who she's never met. And he was posted for 9 months and no coming back after a couple of months for a long weekend. 9 months solid in the Middle East. So she's living with my gran and granddad, who she's only known for literally 5 minutes.
That was sort of a thing in those days, wasn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't.
Yeah.
And, my gran and granddad, welcomed her with opening arms. And she was, and obviously as well for my mum, coming to the UK from, it wasn't like she was coming from sort of the United States or somewhere like that. Seychelles is very remote. It's a real, small group of islands. So then he sort of did what he wanted to do, and they did it together. They sort of bought what was later on to become my kind of family home, but also was the place where the business was. And I grew up in this world of hospitality, and without really understanding, I loved it. I can remember sort of my mum and dad saying sometimes, like what parents are like at the school gates, and we're a bit sort of like, would turn their nose up that I was kind of growing up in like a business, but I wouldn't change it for the world. It was amazing.
I mean, I would have loved to have like grown up in like a B&B or a hotel or
Yeah,
something. Like,
it was
sounds so much
absolutely
fun.
fantastic. Yeah, and like me and my sister would like. We would play, we would just have sort of like competitions who could answer the phone the best. Because especially my dad, you just wanted to please him.
Yeah.
He was just one of those dads that was just very much like, you wanted to be the best you could be for him. So, and I can still remember it, remember exactly what our sort of scripted line was, and then we'd make it our own. But if me or Michelle got a booking, and then he'd be like, well done, that's good, really, really good. He'd be like, hello, Bitton Park Guesthouse, Paul speaking, how can I help?
And how old were you at this time?
I mean, for me, I was 10, 11, but I mean, there's a 7-year gap between me and Michelle. So I was doing, I was doing that from a really early age, and then my sister came along. But yeah, it was just a brilliant sort of space. It was an amazing surrounding. My mates would call for me in the morning on the way to school, and obviously he's cooking full English breakfasts for all of the guests. So he'd send me and the boys off with a bacon sandwich to school. It was just good times, yeah.
So kind of talking about the food. So obviously, this is a very different upbringing to most. What were you eating? What were your dinners like?
Dinners Monday to Thursday, real traditional English fare. And because of my dad's kind of background of working in London, then abroad, everywhere, he taught himself to cook because he was living in bed-sits and self-catering accommodation with the job. But unbeknown to me, that was actually quite rare growing up then, because then when I would start to go around friends' houses, mums were the cooks, and the dads, all of my mates, their dads didn't have a single clue what to do in the kitchen. So I had this quite rare dad that was like really good at cooking, and Monday to Thursday was dad. So it would be anything from shepherd's pies, meat and potato pies, roast dinners, like faggots, mushy peas and mash, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I loved it. And he would always do the breakfast. So he would, like bacon, egg, everything. And I look back now and sort of, he'd have the tea towel over his shoulder, proper multitasking in the morning. I'd like wake up around 5:30, 6 and just hear him kind of whistling, singing. He was very, very glass half full, positive.
Yeah. Sounds great.
Yeah, it was amazing. And then at the weekends, Mum would take over, and then the weekends would be more sort of that Seychelles kind of like influence. So things like on Fridays would be curries, lots of fish, and that would sort of be the vibe over the weekend. And it tended to be Monday to Thursday would be contractors, and then the weekends we'd have families. So yeah, it was amazing again. And I look at that now and think that was awesome. Then I just took it for granted. It was just, this is the world I live in.
I guess you do when you're a kid.
Yeah,
you don't know any better.
Didn't know any different.
Yeah.
But now I look back at that and think, wow, that was a really awesome thing.
For people that might not know, I mean, to be honest, I don't really know. Talk to me about the food of the Seychelles.
Yeah. It's sort of a cuisine that's very seafood based. A lot of people might think there's a lot of spice. It's actually not. It's more herbaceous. So again, lots of herbs, lots of seafood. Octopus is a real speciality there. Red snapper.
Oh, my favourite.
And yeah, it's so Seychelles it's a Creole is the language, which is basically like a native French. And yeah, so there's kind of French influences in what they do, but yeah, the biggest thing is as you can imagine, is seafood. Yeah. That's the kind of the big one.
Because geographically, it's quite close to Mauritius.
Yeah, that's
which is where I've been several times. One of my favorite places. So I can imagine there's some similarities with Mauritius.
Yeah. Again,
the Creole, and I mean, because the food in Mauritius.
Yeah.
That's something I remember so well. So good. I'm going to fast forward a lot here because we've got a lot to get through. You've been a very busy man over the past couple decades or so. So you achieved your first big break, I would say, in sort of 98 when you're working with the legend that was Gary Rhodes.
Yeah.
I was a big fan of his because I'm from that era of sort of watching Gary on TV. He was like one of the first sort of TV chefs.
Yeah.
You were working at his restaurant. I want to know what he was like as a boss, a colleague, a friend.
Yeah.
Kind of, because that was sort of before I was sort of in this world, so to speak.
Yeah. The best way I can describe it, and still now, I just think he was truly ahead of his time. I think he was a real pioneer for now what is so normal in food. But back then when he was banging the drum for it, it wasn't. And that was, British produce, sort of using kind of like local suppliers. But the big thing that I look back on with Gary is the simplicity in the cooking, in the produce. And when I started working for Gary, I'd only worked in 2 kitchens previous to that. I was 16 years old, and when I started, in a kitchen, and when I started with Gary, I just turned 19. My first job in London.
Young.
So all I'd seen is kind of what you think as a chef, and it's like the more you add to the plate, the better.
Yeah.
And when you sort of went and worked for someone like Gary, and you saw how it's stripped back, but what you don't see as the customer, but you can certainly taste it, is what goes into kind of the sauce making, the braise, the confit, the cook, just the intricacy of it, like some things, like how we, if we were making the bases for sauces, we would cut the vegetables like chefs would if they were presenting that on the plate. Bearing in mind this is all going to be passed through a sieve and through a chinois and stuff like that. So his level of detail was unbelievable. And then I suppose I look at him, the only other chef I can think of like that would be like Heston Blumenthal, in that most chefs are brilliant and like they do amazing things, but there's only like a couple of chefs that actually either change the game or invent something, so like if you think like Heston with the triple cooked chip.
Yeah.
For Gary, there was just certain things that he would do, and one of them for me is the bread and butter pudding, which was... It was just completely changing something, and not just necessarily taking a recipe and sort of making a tweak, actually thinking about it and changing it, and to sort of cook that bread and butter pudding in the same way you would a creme brulee. And I've been there 7 months. I would see this thing get made lunch and dinner. No matter if you didn't sell any at lunch, you made a fresh one for dinner. You made them always, you were 24 hours ahead, so the custard soaked in, it aged, and that was the game changer bit of it. It was the fact that you made like a creme anglaise custard, and then you cooked it in a bain-marie really low like you would creme brulees. So all of this thing we know of growing up, where it's kind of just, egg yolks, sugar, milk poured over bread, sultanas on top that look like burnt rabbit's droppings. And just kind of split and coagulated and horrible.
Yeah.
This was just unreal. And I'd never seen like fresh vanilla before. I'd never seen proper vanilla pods. And anyway, pastry chef just one day said, "Come and have a taste." And still to this day, there's a few other things, but that was the first thing. At 19 years old, I just put this spoon in my mouth and it rocked my world. Really? It was just like, what have I just eaten? I think it's why I put vanilla up there as like one of my favourite ingredients, because it just blew me to smithereens. I was like, that is unbelievable. And then as I matured as a chef and a cook, I then understood what it was he had done and was doing. So yeah, and he was just amazing for me. You know what London's like. I moved from Southampton. I didn't have like nowhere near the amount of money to, to kind of even get like a bed sit or anything like that, because, you needed 6 weeks up front, this much deposit and stuff. And he helped me with all of that. And yeah, he was phenomenal.
Well, I was a fan from the outside as well. I guess also, we're talking about a time in London that was very exciting for the food scene.
Yeah.
This is sort of the late 90s. You've got, it's all getting a bit crazy, when naming, you got Marco, you got everyone out and about. And, what was your experience, I guess, working in the kitchens in London at the time? Because I think before then, I always sort of say as a city, we were always a little bit behind everyone else. And then suddenly this surge of just exciting individuals, food, restaurants, everything was just starting to open. And we were now finally sort of like picking up our feet and, entering the hemisphere, so to speak. What was your experience of London in those days?
It was incredible. It was absolutely brilliant. And each year I lived here, it just became better and better, and I just loved. I was really, really fortunate that, and when I say fortunate, I really sort of did my homework. I knew who I wanted to work for. When I went to work for Gordon after Gary, restaurant Gordon Ramsay was 2 Michelin stars. I a lot of my friends that I was living with were working for Marco, which was 3 Michelin stars at the Oak Room. Nico Ladenis, I had friends working there under Paul Rhodes for Nico on Park Lane. And then you had Pierre Kaufman with 3 Michelin stars at what now is Royal Hospital Road. And it was, I don't know, there was just something about sort of like wanting to kind of go work for Gordon that just, I don't know, it was just like, I was just naturally drawn to it. That was where I wanted to, go work. But yeah, I just remember, with my friends, we'd go out and when Tom Aiken was like absolutely like, man on a mission. And I remember going to eat there, and you are, as a young chef, like, it's nothing like what Tom's doing now at Muse. But when we went and ate there, it was just like, as a young chef, because it was just so technique driven. It was, and when you're kind of that age, you are more focused on like all the techniques than you actually are the produce. And it just blew us all away. It was absolutely amazing, and it was totally delicious as well.
Yeah.
It was absolutely brilliant.
Did it feel competitive?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you felt like you were
time.
always on your toes?
Oh, yeah, hugely. And even when you walked in, it's different now, and there was that bit of rivalry between Tom and Gordon.
Yeah.
I remember we walked down into the kitchen to say hello, and obviously Tom, we all know what like the reputation of Tom in when he was kind of like gunning for it like that.
Yeah.
And you walk down into the kitchen, and it was like, we were Gordon Ramsay lads. And he said hello.
Yeah, but still, you were on the other team.
Yeah, it was hugely competitive, and I had friends working at the Square, and that was that era, and it was absolutely brilliant.
I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall during those days, because I just don't feel like you get that kind of. I don't know if it's like the camaraderie or whatever it is, but I do think sort of the restaurant kitchen scene has obviously changed a lot. And in some ways it sort of had to change for various reasons. But you're actually now I'm calling you the third disciple of Gordon Ramsay that I've had on the podcast. I've had Marcus, I've had Claire Smith, and I've had you. And I'm going to try and just get all of you at some point. And then we're going to do one big group reunion. But, what was your experience like of working with Gordon in those days? Because as you said, like that was a 2 Michelin star restaurant. We're not messing around here.
No. So, I'm now 21 and...
What, right now?
Not, well...
You don't look a day over.
Yeah. I'm like, I was 21 years old, and like I say, I'd heard all about Gordon Ramsay. I knew the reputation. So first of all, I've said to my mum and dad, as far as my mum's concerned, I've made it.
Yeah.
I'm working for a celebrity chef, Gary Rhodes. Everybody knows him. And she's like, sweetheart, like you've made it.
Yeah.
Why would you want to go anywhere else? I'm like, no, mum, it don't work like that. I need to keep moving. And I did. I had a friend that went to work for Gordon, and he literally like didn't enjoy it, hated it, didn't sort of last. And I think sort of he then told, like, there was a group of us, and I don't know, it just didn't put me off. And long story short, I was still working for Gary, and we always used to on a Sunday go and have drinks in a pub called the Gallery right outside Pimlico Station. And one of the lads just was like, "There's Gordon Ramsay." And, so this is Gordon Ramsay that's not on television yet, like nothing. Yeah. Silver Golf outside, parks up to you to make a phone call in a red telephone box. And I was like, and I don't know, I was just, oh my God. And I just was like, okay. So I went over to the phone box, waited outside for ages. He came out, and I said, like, Gordon, hi. I'd love to come work for you, because obviously it was no like social media or anything like that. And he was like, okay. He said, look, here's a kitchen number. Speak to Mark Askew, and we'll go from there. So I rang Mark Askew, stupidly rang him, you know, because you're always working. And I don't think, do you have a mobile yet? I don't think I had a mobile yet. Like, or did I? Anyway.
Oh, I love the old days.
Yeah.
I love the simplicity of the old days.
And so anyway, I rang Gordon Ramsay's kitchen from Rhodes in the Square and left a message. And of course they're going to ring back the number, so they rang back, and the head chef of like Rhodes in the Square. But I wasn't. It was sort of quite common, but I was like, okay, slightly awkward. Anyway, I went and did a what you call a stage, and immediately was like, this is, how can I explain it to you? It was like, you know, like Rhodes in the Square was incredible, but this was like nothing I'd ever seen. Really? And I think the things that really, really stuck out to me that still, again, how can I describe it to you? Like entering Jurassic Park. Do you know what I mean? Where everything looks supersized and large and everything like that. So everyone in the kitchen just seemed like a bloke, and I just seemed like a little boy. Yeah. I remember just seeing one of the first things I saw leaving the pass, and was just this like it was like a ravioli, but it looked like a UFO, like in terms of like a flying saucer. It was just perfect, which is now the lobster langoustine salmon ravioli, and sea bass. Just these wild sea bass. So I'd only ever seen like the kind of the Greek farmed small sea bass, and they were like using wild, you know, 3 to 4 pound bass that were like, so you just get these perfect pavés sat on again. And as I was starting to kind of really understand food and what I'd seen with Gary Rhodes, you would expect to go there and it be like all like bells and whistles, and it wasn't. It was refined, and like this, it was just like this sort of steamed sea bass with a basil leaf underneath, comfy potatoes going around, and then just this like vermouth caviar sauce, and that was it. And then you had the ravioli, which was just like the lobster beef dressing, and the scallops. That was the thing as well, the scallops, right? So again, not seen scallops like this. This guy just going straight in with like a boning knife, like clicking the hinge open, and then just bang really, really quickly. And I was like, I've got to learn that. My goodness, because I've opened scallops with this like little restaurant knife, slow, cumbersome. Even if my way might even be better, which it's not, he looks cool. Like he looks absolutely badass the way he opens these scallops. So anyway, so now Mark Sargent was cooking the scallops. So you got Mark Sargent, David Dempsey on the sauce, Simone, Claire Smith. Claire Smith joined about a year later. Okay. And Marcus would be there, just about to open Petrus, the original Petrus site. Angela Hartnett was in the kitchen, and it was just this amazing array of ingredients. But this scallop dish, and whenever we have scallops, it's what we do now. But it was equal quantities of curry powder and salt, but not weighed. It'd be like a cup of curry powder to a cup of salt for the density. Yeah. And then onto a big tray, dried out, and then you would just sprinkle that onto the scallops. Really quick roast in the pan, cut them in half, big XL Orkney scallops. And then it was with like sauté potatoes, black truffle, Perigord truffle. Stop. And it was just, but the thing about it was,
my mouth is.
It was just watching them dress. So you would go scallop potato, scallop potato, scallop potato around a ring of like this frisée salad, and then you put a slice of black truffle on every piece of potato, and then you, with a bottle, this perfect like ring of like truffle mayonnaise, which just sounds like truffle mayonnaise, but you're like, the things that were going into this mayonnaise were, and it was I suppose it was, for me, it was like kind of going, I also remember reading White Heat and Stephen Terry saying it's like the SAS of kitchens. That's how I felt now looking back, it being in Royal Hospital Road.
There is that element of like slight militant style, like in a good way. The sort, I mean, the way you just described it, I sort of pictured this scene in my head, and just sort of saw everyone just sort of meticulously doing their bit, and it all just coming together into the dishes that, I mean, it's incredible. You know, say what you will or what anyone feels about Gordon, you know, what he created and the people that have worked beneath him and then gone on to achieve what, you know, like yourself, I think says a lot about the person, you know, so the proof is kind of in the pudding, so to speak, no pun intended. Sort of just fast forwarding now, you leave Gordon, you went to go work with Marcus, and then you decide to go at it alone, which is sort of where I really want to start talking about your journey. And you head up the kitchen at No6 in Padstow, which you then eventually take over and you rename it as Paul Ainsworth at No6. And then you won your Michelin star in 2013. So now I want to talk about you as sort of your own entity. What was it like, or what is it like, I guess, still kind of running your own business as opposed to now working under someone else?
Yeah. It's the most rewarding. It's the hardest thing, you know, that like I've ever done. There's different levels of, you know, it was so difficult, and it was sometimes absolutely brutal, you know, the hours, everything you would do, working for Marcus, working for Gordon, working for Gary. But then this becomes a different level of difficult because it's you, and you make a ton of mistakes and you get things extremely wrong. But if you have what I would recommend to anyone if they're thinking about, you know, going and having a go on their own, is try and find yourself someone that you can learn from. Someone, it can be a friend, it can be someone you know who's like good at business. Because where chefs can fall down is that they can get very wrapped up and in love with the art of cooking and basically, you know, the whole sense of food and all of that. And that is what's always got to be at the heart, because that's what draws the customers. But you then got to try and find a way of making the whole thing work. And the whole thing works by you've got to make money. And making money means that the first and foremost, you can invest in the people. Because at the end of the day, you don't build a business, you build people. And then the people build the business. And you will only get, you know, brilliant people by being able to look after them, value them, invest in them. And then the rest of that investment through profit is then you get to a stage like we have at No6, from the early days of having a stove that was on bricks, a Falcon Dominator, to one day, beyond my wildest dreams, of having a beautiful Athanor suite, Zalto glassware, you know, cutopole cutlery, like all of the things that don't happen at first and take a huge long time to, you know, to get there and to earn. But I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it for anything. I look at, you know, I'm quite reflective lately of the journey. It'd be 18 years since I drove down to Cornwall in a white van, with literally my belongings in dustbin bags. And I actually lived in what's now one of our team houses. You know, again, back then I'd call it staff accommodation. That word's banned in what we do. You know, no one is staff. Yeah. You know, like it's a team, it's a family, and that really, you know, is something we strive for. But I'm really glad that it's taken as long as it has, because when it comes too quick and when things, I don't know, it goes back to what you asked me at the beginning. It goes back to that thing that my dad put into me, is like, I don't know, I love earning things. Like I really, really love earning things. And like, quick funny story. I actually did a gig with so James Martin asked me to come up to his restaurant, and James is like, he's amazing. He's such a generous guy, and he's just really is like, you know, salt of the earth. And bearing in mind, I've driven from from Cornwall to Manchester, done this gig at his restaurant. And at the end of it, he handed me a Selfridges bag. And inside there, he knew that like I was a fan of Belstaff. All I had was like a Belstaff cap.
Yeah.
Always thought, I'd really love a Belstaff jacket one day because I love motorbikes and that. And he bought me a Belstaff jacket to say thank you for coming and do, 2 days of out of the restaurant to cook at his restaurant. And I always remember taking it back, and I put it on, and I was so happy with it, but there was still a part of me in my brain that was like, but I didn't buy it. But even though I have earned it because I've gone and done that, and that sort of that mentality has always been my mindset. It's always whatever it is. It's always like I love how sometimes how long it takes, and when it does happen and you've earned it, that there's no sweeter feeling. It's just the best.
That's so refreshing to hear, Paul, because I feel like we live in a world now, especially with sort of, the younger generation, with things like social media, that everything has to happen overnight. All this overnight success, all this sort of, to be honest with you, there's a lot of people out there who feel very entitled and feel like the world owes them something.
Yeah.
And to hear that actually sent shivers down me, because I just thought that's what it's about. I have it sometimes. I'll be like, oh, why am I not here? Why is it not happening? No, I hate this saying, but trust the process. Work bloody hard and good things will come to you.
Yeah.
This is how things work in life.
Yeah.
And it's really lovely to hear that from you. I think when we live in a world where people just assume that things are just going to come to them, it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah, and you're right. It's I have to tell myself that sometimes. There's certain goals that have been goals for a long, long time, and we haven't got there yet, haven't achieved them yet, and you can't. Sometimes you just got to look at it and go, I can't lose myself in this and get kind of beat myself up, and that's taken a long, long time. And trust me, I still beat myself up. I still kind of like think, well, why is that not? Why is that not happening? But I've never really used that saying until late, but it's actually helped me trust the process because there's nothing else I can do to try and work out why. I've just got to keep on going. And the one, I spoke to some, we did the Speakers for School thing with Simon Rogan recently, and it was like an online thing. And sometimes I think, you get asked that question, and you sort of the answers these days, especially with this whole, everyone's so knowledgeable and everyone's got so much knowledge to hand, and we're all very good at talking knowledge and everything. And I think sometimes people want you to come out with like the kind of the Bruce Lee quotes and all of those and that. And simply, if you boil it down to one, it's just you just don't give up.
Yeah.
And as you say, trust the process. Just do not give up. Dust yourself off. Keep going. Keep questioning, and just keep moving forward. But one thing I can say, which you are absolutely right, Hannah, is that I am living proof that. Yeah, what people might see now, or maybe have just heard of what we're doing now, but it's 2005. It's a long, long time. It's 18 years, and I've been there. I can remember being at the Food and Travel Awards. We were up for like Restaurant of the Year and stuff, and there was a chef there, and he was like, he was 25 years old. He had PR, publicist, agent. He was absolutely surrounded by everything. PA, whole entire like team in that, and like, and I was kind of like early 30s, like mid 30s, and and again I did think, I'm miles behind, I'm miles away. Now I'm like, no, it was all happening right. It's and because it is when it's earned. And when you and as you say, you don't think you're entitled to it, like when it comes, there is absolutely no better feeling.
Absolutely. And I also think during the process of working hard for that amount of time, also appreciating and allowing to sit down and feel proud of yourself for what you've done so far. We've all got goals.
Yeah.
There's so many, there's things you want to do when I'm looking at you and thinking, oh my God, like what else could he possibly, you've done so much. Me, I've only really just started in this game. And but then sometimes I'll sit down and even my husband will say it to me and he'll be like, just think about how far you've come, even in 3 years.
Yeah.
And we don't do that because we're always thinking of the next thing, the next thing, the next thing.
Yeah.
And it's also about sitting down and reflecting and thinking, actually, you know what? I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
I'm doing the best I can.
Yeah.
And what will be, and I'll work bloody hard at it.
Absolutely.
And, I believe in a bit of karma and dharma and whatever else there is. So, let's see. I must ask, what did it feel like the moment you found out you did win the Michelin star?
It's honestly like for me and Emma, like it was, getting married, having CC, like winning a Michelin star. Like it is, I mean, if you speak to most chefs that have won 1, 2, 3, whatever, like it's like there's so many other things now, and there's lots of lists, and there's other guys, but I can only go back into my era, like working for Gordon. That's all I knew about. It was only when I moved to Cornwall that I then understood, that there was other guides and stuff, but and I think also as well, you have to that also for Michelin hasn't just come from nowhere. Mm-hmm. It's a few years ago. I did like these things with GQ, which was amazing. I was absolutely couldn't believe I got asked to do it. It was with Paul Henderson, and we did a motorbike and two cars. But it was like we had the Michelin guidebook, and we went to restaurants at Baines on motorbikes, and then we went to Royal Hospital Road and number 6, and with the red guide. And I knew sort of, Two Brothers, but I didn't know the real deep history. And I learned loads, through that. So then you realise that, like, when you say Michelin, when you say to somebody who has no real sort of idea about food, isn't a foodie, but most of the time, I would say 99% of the time, if you said to them, I'm going to take you to a Michelin star restaurant tonight, they will. It's like, when people say it's the Rolls Royce of water glasses, it has that. So then when you get a Michelin star and you get it in the way we did, it was the year that the guide got leaked early online. It was the first time of the guide also, in my knowing of the guide, of it went from January to October. So there was 2 announcements that year. They announced it in January, and then they were announcing stars again because we're going to move it to October.
Right.
It hasn't sort of gone back to October since COVID. So the guide was due to be released, I think, on October the 7th, and September the 27th, it was leaked online. And I think the story goes, they were working offline, but actually they weren't. They were working online. And then I got a phone call in the morning from Simon Holston at 7:00 in the morning saying, have you seen Twitter? This is 2012. And I was like, no. And he was like, go on Twitter. So I went on Twitter. Me and Emma, like, we were just like, what? Like this. And then I rang Tom Kerridge. And Tom was like, look, I'm going to send you the number for HQ. Like, he was like, at 9:00, call them. 9:00 never came, as you can imagine. So anyway, and it was like this, like it was like this guy was just like, I don't know, he was like this guy knew that he was going to be like in this story for my whole time on this planet. So I rang Michelin, and it was a hello Michelin. My name's Paul Ainsworth. I've got a restaurant in Padstow called No6. And I was stuttering. I couldn't get my words out. I couldn't believe I was calling Michelin. And I was like, it's sort of saying on Twitter that No6 has a Michelin star. And he was like, does it, young man? Like that, just really calm, like Duncan's toy chest on Home Alone 2.
Yeah.
Him.
Yes.
That was who I rang.
Oh my God.
Mr. Turtle Dove Man. Right? That was who I rang. And I was like, it was almost like if I'd rang back, they were like, no one no one works here by that name. So anyway, I was like, it does. And he was like, okay. He said, well, if it's there in black and white, I would take that as good as you've won a Michelin star, Paul. And Emma's right next to me, like literally Emma just burst into tears.
Oh my God.
The whole morning was crazy. Like, because back then we lived right in Padstow, and I always used to walk to work. And we finally got out the house at about 11:30 to walk down to work. I wanted to be there for lunch service. I had to get there for lunch service because I just had this thing which I'll come on to that I had in my head, and like I'd like direct messages like from Rene Redzepi. I've never met Rene Redzepi in my life, just saying congratulations, Paul. Even like saying Paul and stuff like that, and phone calls from chefs that I was such legends to me but I didn't know them, were texting. They got your number off someone saying, well done. And there was so much. There was a lot of love. It was amazing. And then I just remember getting on lunch service, and that was the bit that I wanted, because the first check came on, and reading that first check, because now it's a Michelin star restaurant. This is Michelin star food. This is now, we were one of hundreds of thousands of restaurants in the United Kingdom. And now we're in this kind of group of I think there was about 130 at that point of 1 stars. And, and I just remember dressing the first starters and just sort of pushing them through, and they're going into the dining room, and it was just incredible.
It feels really emotional.
It was.
Did you cry?
Yeah. And it was just amazing. And because that's what I grew up with in hospitality is kind of Michelin, and you can't explain it. It is a lot. It is kind of like a badge of honor. It is something that is just truly, just in the same way as an athlete and a gold medal. They're incredible athletes. To even get to the Olympics is amazing. They're brilliant. But to win like a kind of a gold, a silver, a bronze, it's that gratification. Yeah. It's hard to explain, but it was just incredible.
Oh God, it was so beautifully explained. I was getting tears in my eyes, and I was like, it was 10 years ago, Hannah, but still it is a big thing.
Yeah, huge.
And I think also you're absolutely what you said, that was kind of what you had worked in. That was your environment. So to be able to get that on your own, at your own restaurant, it's incredible. You do keep mentioning lovely Emma. Emma is your wife.
Yeah.
And my parents also work together, so I know what it's like to have that dynamic of sort of work and pleasure. And, how do you find working with Emma?
Brilliant, because we've always, Emma's never been like direct, and what I mean by direct, as in, so not like I'm the chef in the kitchen and Emma's on the floor out front. So Emma's always been came into the business when we got Cafe Reggiano's, and this was when we had no one, but it was me that started off when you're putting all your invoices onto Sage, you're doing all of that after a long day service and that, then kind of making sure all the human resource stuff and everything's kept up to date. And we just have always worked brilliantly like that. But the biggest thing for me is that there's been always times when I'm like, I'm just getting it wrong. I can't see the light for the trees. I can't it's not right, it's not working. And because Emma knows the businesses as well and knows them inside out, and she will always be able to put me back together and say, come on, it's not as bad as what you think it is. You've got this. But also at the same time, I am, and I suppose that's where that kind of, with anything I do have that like entrepreneurial side as well. I do have that thing where I'm like, it's like ideas, and you're then like, well, what about this? What about that? And then you work brilliantly together, because if Emma was like that, it would all probably be a bit of a car crash. Whereas Emma will be, like the other way, like when we were going to get involved with Reggiano's, Emma was quite hesitant. Emma's plays a huge reason in why we haven't sort of gone beyond Cornwall, and we've kind of, more judgment than luck, not sort of like created like lots of what we do. because we can keep it tight and we can be with the teams, and people think that that's me, and you know that kind of those decisions, you know, come from me, but they don't. They come from, like I said earlier, having a brilliant mentor, but also having like Emma kind of saying, you know, well, okay, but is that what we want to do? Does that sort of like fit with a set of principles that we do?
I think you always need that, though. I mean, it's sort of, you know, whether people or you see chefs as artists, which I actually think I do in a way. I think behind the sort of the creative one, there has to be that other person. And it's similar with my parents. You know, my dad's a photographer. He will sit here and say to you, looking you in the eyes, and say he wouldn't be where he was without my mum behind the scenes, kind of running the show, because you can't do it all. No, you know, you're great at what you do. You do your thing. She does hers. You come together. Sometimes it overlaps. But you've both got to have your place. Yeah. And it's got to be this fine balance.
Yeah, and you know what? You know, your dad's absolutely right. And I also remember hearing, you know, someone, you know, describing their wife. It was actually Sat Baines, saying, you know, it's not the woman behind me, it's actually the woman in front of me clearing the path.
Love
and
that.
It really is that I really related to that, because that's exactly what it is like with, you know, with myself and Emma. Yeah, you know, it's, you know, Paul Ainsworth at number 6, or, you know, Paul Ainsworth, but the actual, like you say, the what keeps it whole, what keeps it sort of, you know, well, you don't run away with yourself or get carried away, or the other way of being a bit like, you know, come on, it's not as bad as what you think it is, like, you know, you're going to be okay. So so in that way we work together as a, you know, like, yeah, it's an amazing team.
I love that. I want to meet her.
Yes.
When I come down to Cornwall, I'm going to meet her.
Can.
So this is not your first rodeo of a podcast. You also have, you started your own a couple of years ago. It's called Knives, Forks and Tunes.
Yeah.
Great name. I love it. Essentially, you're bringing together the 3 ultimate facets of a dinner party.
Yeah.
So I've got to ask you, your go-to dinner party dish?
So, crab. Really, I love, right, one of my favourite things is really chilled crab. Just a tiny bit of mayonnaise to bring it together on really crunchy toast. Yes. Okay? Delicious. That is perfect. Olive oil, fresh basil, like that. Main course.
Oh, he's going in. Okay,
yeah, I'm going in. Okay, main course, we'll like, so rib of beef, chips, béarnaise. Dessert. One of my, again, so you know, like I told you about the bread and butter pudding moment, a moment of that, like at Gordon Ramsay's, at restaurant Gordon Ramsay, was when I learned like how they do the apple tartatan. And growing up as a kid in having a dad as a northerner, we would always have like a lump of cheddar with things. So apple tartatan with cheese is,
wait, what?
Oh yeah.
That sounds incredible.
It's stunning. Because think about it, you know, cheese, chutney, grapes, crackers. It's absolutely beautiful.
Why have I never had that before?
So as kids, like we'd have, like, he would always do, like, again, not an apple tartatan, but apple pie, homemade apple pie with a lump of cheddar, Eccles cakes, lump of cheddar. Do you know what I mean? Fruit cake, Dundee cake.
Okay.
So I would have that, but then I would like, because it's the last, you know, meal and that, I'd probably then have some Cornish clotted cream with it. So I'd have it with a few things and vanilla ice cream. And so playlist.
You already you're asking.
Yeah, because
I've got the question. You know what you're doing.
Because you know what? I always thought to myself, I'd love to be in there. I'd love to answer these questions. And I always thought about it.
What is on the playlist?
So they always gave like a playlist, right? So I'm like, okay, yeah, that's good. You can listen to tunes, but no, like for me, it's my dinner party, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sam Devine on the decks.
Who?
Sam Devine. So she's basically a house music DJ, and she's absolutely phenomenal.
You're into your house tunes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she, so if you follow things like Defected and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So she's and like she just plays like the tunes. I'm just like you're just incredible.
I love this.
So the setting would be somewhere, you know, like the really classy side of Ibiza.
Yes, yeah, that's the side I like. Yeah,
that side on the beach.
Okay.
So rather than the playlist, I would just have Sam Divine, just
Perfect.
like absolutely. So it's also as well bringing some atmosphere.
Yeah, absolutely. And who's at the table?
So I'm gonna go with people that like I really sort of like I get inspired by what they say. So Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
I love this. Oh, this is a wicked party.
So yeah, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, because I always like the way that he's always like, you know, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice.
Love that. Yeah.
And he seems like, for someone so famous, seems very, very grounded as well.
So genuine.
And so
there
genuine.
Is something about him. Yeah.
Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah. Okay.
Same thing.
I'd like him at my party.
I find him I just think like proper man crush. Like he just
very attractive.
So attractive. Yeah. So cool. But also like he's inspired to be better.
Yeah.
Like love him. Sir Alex Ferguson.
Yeah. Are you a United fan?
Yes.
Hooray! Yeah. Me too.
Sir David Jason.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
And yeah, like I mean, I think that's a good party, isn't it?
That's a strong
group,
Can
isn't
I
it?
come?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my God, this is wonderful.
And then also as well, we had, we'd have like people like that, could be dead or alive, fictional or fantasy.
Yeah.
So I'd have some characters from Thundercats, my favourite cartoon as a kid. Just because you can.
Yeah.
My dad, because I'd love to have him back. And of course, Ems and Cece.
Absolutely. Oh my God, what a dinner!
Yes.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna help you organise this. Okay, sort of back to sort of just some light-hearted questions. Do you cook much at home on your days off?
So the answer's no. Emma will kind of like at home do a lot of the cooking, which is absolutely amazing, because when I met Emma, she really had no relationship with food. Okay. To the point, actually, like hated food.
Oh wow. Okay.
So we're talking real plain eater. So when I cook, it's generally when we've got like friends or Christmas, or like Emma's got a huge family and they'll come round, and like I love that, because then it's like it can be a bit more light work.
Yeah, of course.
Rather than just kind of like.
So what are you making if you fancy just sort of making a bit of a meal?
General go-to will probably be like getting in some really nice steaks and like carving them all up, because I think also as well where we work with this amazing butcher in Cornwall, Philip Warren's. I think you know them. So I'll say, look, can I have this, and they'll be like, yeah, no problem. So straight away the raw material's incredible, and I think that steak is probably the most asked question I get. Like, how do I cook a steak? How do I cook a steak well? How do I do it right and stuff? So I always think that when you sort of do the things that are just normal to chefs, like, letting it come right up to room temperature, kind of cooking it, resting it, just like really sort of knowing how to do it well. The reaction is unreal, because I just think for British people, we are so obsessed by steaks. Do you know what I mean? And you just get a lot, like, especially it's like your quintessential thing. And like most British people, they want to pay absolutely nothing for it. They want it to melt in the mouth.
Very British.
Yeah, it's so British. They're like, they want it. They want everything from it.
Yes. They want an out of body experience.
And when they get that out of body experience from a steak, it's just like, I tell you what.
That is so true. Actually, I think I might have been that person.
And it's either these two things they liken it to. I tell you what, it was like butter or marshmallow.
It's so true. God, I might be guilty of that. Bloody hell. Are you a starter or a dessert person?
Starter.
Okay, good. We can be friends.
I love yeah.
What 3 items are always in your fridge?
Oh, always condiments.
Good.
Lots of various condiments, from pickled onions to
Yes.
chutneys to all of that.
Yeah.
All the milks. So this row here, I can picture it right now. We've got Alpro chocolate milk for Cece, Alpro coconut milk for Cece, oat milk for Cece and myself, almond milk, semi-skimmed milk, because like when people come by and they're like, oh yeah, I don't want none of that plant-based
that's what
stuff,
I need
and
to
I
start
don't want none of that skimmed gear like that. And we've got skimmed as well.
What world are we living in? I mean, it is just ridiculous, isn't it? I'm embarrassed for myself.
And then there's the kind of like the sort of the drawer that's generally always got like ham, smoked salmon, stuff like that in. Stuff for a sandwich.
Yeah, exactly. Love that.
That's always there.
Aside from your own, where's some of your favourite restaurants to eat?
Chris McClurg, our head chef at No6, we took him for his birthday. Well, I say, you'd think this would just be one restaurant. We did 3 in 24 hours.
Wow.
Like it was kind of like a field trip and Chris's birthday.
Love that.
So doTERRA, which was brilliant. Bibendum, which was
one of my favourite
amazing.
buildings.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
The Ledbury. Before that, when I was up doing Next Level Chef, I had a night. This will really always stick in my memory. I didn't go home at the weekends. I was in London for 3 weeks, just up the road from you at White City, and I know James Knappett really well.
Yeah.
He had all 19 seats booked, but he said, we do have an extra chair. He said, I'll just stick it on the end. Are you okay with that? I said, absolutely. If that's all right with you. And it was absolutely amazing because I was literally just on my own. And because kitchen table is like, it's such an experience to just see people at the top of their game, their craft, ingredients, amazing. And I was sort of just had this, you arrive at 5:30, left just after midnight, and it was brilliant. It didn't even feel like that. And I know that long, and that was absolutely phenomenal. Myself and Tom Kerridge and Beth and Emma will probably go down for me always as the meal that was just something off the scale, which was back then called Frantzen Limburg. So now it's just Frantzen, which I've not been to where the location is now, but back then it was Bjorn Frantzen and another chap, Limburg. So Limburg was pastry and Bjorn was like all the savoury, and it was me and Tom. Well, as 2 chefs, we got back to the hotel and we were still awake at 5:30 in the morning, just going through each course, talking about it. It was just amazing, and it was 2 Michelin stars then, and you just knew that this was just the beginning for him, and obviously now as well, with a whole global empire. But yeah, absolutely phenomenal.
Okay, right. We finish with a few quick fire questions. Are you ready?
Yes.
What is the craziest food you've ever eaten?
I saw this question, Hannah, and I'm really sorry to disappoint. I don't really.
It could be whatever's crazy for you.
Yeah, I don't. You want to say something that people go like that, but I mean, nothing really. I mean, I was judging Great British Menu a couple of years ago, and someone bought dried insects on, but I don't feel that that's nothing people are new to.
You know what? That for some people that could be crazy.
Elk.
What? Oh, God.
In Lapland,
okay.
And stuff like that.
Yeah,
I think there was a bear burger, stuff like.
Yeah, okay. Now we're getting in that. Now we're getting in. What's been your most memorable meal?
We went to New York. It was me, Emma, and Cece. Cece was just coming up to 4 years old, and I just wanted to just kind of take Emma back there because, long story short, me and Emma were together before and we split up. And
no way.
yes, we did.
Oh,
and
wow.
And when we did, she when we got back together, she used to tell me this story of like, you know, like a lot of the flights would stop in New York and they'd have like 2 or 3 day stopover. And she was up at the top of the Empire State Building with her. She had a best friend, a gay guy, that they would always go like round New York and did all the tourist things. And she was just remembers being up there feeling, you know, like, well, where's my life going? You know, what will, you know, because we were together for 3 years and like it was. So I always had this in my head, and like when we got married, we literally had like we didn't have a pot to piss in, and I got the sort of wedding ring I got her was like, you know, it was just was all I could afford at the time. And you know, when you've got friends and all of the girls have got like really big rocks and big wedding rings, and you just, as a bloke, I was just like, like mine's not up to much. So anyway, we went to New York, and she had no idea what was going on. I told Cece, and I was like, I want you to give this to mummy. So I got her like a wedding ring that was a bit better than the one that like when I proposed to her, and at the top of the Empire State Building where she was with her gay best friend, wondering if she'd ever meet anyone and stuff like that. So that was, and then we went out for dinner that night to this amazing Roberta's. Oh, yeah, in Brooklyn. And it was, to me, just that day, that meal, everything was just amazing.
Is it in Bushwick?
Just Brooklyn, and they took us there. Roberta's, the really cool pizza place that looks like. Is this the pizza place?
Yes,
yeah,
it's fantastic.
Yeah,
it's like bits of a warehouse vibe.
Yeah. Oh yeah, like metal
it's
door,
really,
covered in graffiti.
Yes.
Certain taxi drivers won't even take you there.
Absolutely, I've been there.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
So that for me was just like that whole day, and just being with the girls like that was actually even better than proposing the first time, and the fact that Cece was there just was.
Where did you propose the first time?
Dublin.
Oh.
Yeah.
You're such a romantic.
Wow.
It's so lovely. It's so refreshing. Okay, this is going to be the most important question you're ever going to get asked.
Right.
Your entire life.
Yeah.
My favourite snack of all time is a packet of crisps sitting right next to me. My favourite flavour?
Yeah.
Pickled onion Munster Munch. Everyone knows this by now.
Yeah.
What is your favourite flavour of crisps and why? So
first and foremost, you have impeccable taste. Yes. Like impeccable. And that would be up there. Okay.
But?
No.
Okay, so I feel like there's a but coming.
But
uh-oh.
Paper bag. They don't do it no more. Brannigan's. Right, and they used to be in a paper bag, right? Okay. And I don't know whether they went into this and thought, do you know what, this costs way too much, but that was part of it.
I've heard of them.
They used to do a crisp called roast beef and English mustard. And you know what? You know when roast beef in a crisp, right? Obviously, it's that kind of like hotty, salty, umami seasoning that they put on it. But it really was that English mustard hit, because it would go through your nostrils. Yes. And they were, and then they basically changed the packaging to like McCoy's, you know, like the foil. Yeah, it just wasn't the same level of detail. They'd lost the touch.
Shame. I know. Do you know what's funny? I don't know if it was a Brannigan's, but something's come up in me, a nostalgic moment. I remember eating a crisp when I was younger that would go up my nose, a bit like wasabi does.
Yeah,
like
exactly
does.
like that.
And I wonder if that was what it was.
Yeah, they were called roast beef and English mustard. They were a little bit, you know, they were about 20 pence more than the others, the Walkers and all that. Yeah. But they were thick. They were, but it was, I don't know, there was just something there was something quite nice about that slightly painful feeling that goes through your nostrils.
God, I love asking this question, especially to Michelin
stars. But that there, right, pickled onion Monster Munch.
I know.
You are
supreme flavour.
That is unreal.
I know, especially on a hangover.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
That is my hangover cure. That and a glass of Ribena.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. What food sums up happiness for you?
I love every meal at home, even when it's just the three of us, or when it's family. It's never plated, as in you put everything on the plate and serve it to your guests or the family. It's like so if it's a roast dinner, that's the best example. Roast dinner, like everything, even the meat and the potatoes, it's all on boards, platters, bowls, and just passing that all around and sitting down and just, being with people you love, like friends as well, like that, like your proper great friends, is for me, that's like absolute joy, like absolute happiness. And that comes in the form as well of, like when I was saying earlier, if I do cook at home, it will also generally be on the barbecue. Okay. I've got one of those guys from Country Fire Kitchen who make those like Argentinian, really simple structured like metal framed barbecues. Yeah. And that, and just sort of like cooking like over fire in the garden, like with, and I'm not on about like smoke and all of that. I'm just on about like lighting some logs and letting them burn white and just cooking outside. Yeah. No, not getting into smoking and all of that. Yeah. Just cook. So very primitive, if you like. Cooking over fire, and then like plates and bowls of potatoes, salads, just all of the. Because there's something as well, like you actually feel like it feels really wholesome. Yeah. Feels really kind of clean as well. It is like wholesome. And I to me that's absolute joy of joys.
Oh, I love it. Okay, final question. Live to eat or eat to live?
Do you know what? That is a fantastic question. And I'm going to say both.
Okay, you're allowed to. I've had people have said that. That's okay.
Because, so the first one, eat to live, absolutely. Like it's what I do. It's my job. It doesn't feel like a job. My dad always said to me, if you can find something that doesn't feel like work, no matter what, you're a millionaire. Mm-hmm. You've cracked it. Mm-hmm. And the sort of the kind of like live to eat. The reason I've said both for that is because, like I said at the very, very beginning, more so than ever now, I'm very, very conscious that, you can't go on like you do when you're in your 20s, and the way that we're all guilty of it. We kind of like, sort of don't really look after ourselves, but you can get away with it when you're sort of like, 20s, even 30s. And now, if I want to live as long as I can, I know that like, it's well into the 90% of that is what I put, into my body and looking after myself. And so that's why I've chosen both.
Paul, this has been honestly one of the most inspiring conversations I've had in a long time. And I really hope that people listen to this and take a little something out of your book, because I think that although it was 18 years that you've been at the restaurant and you've been doing what you're doing, there is another 36, if not more, coming your way. And I just wish you the best of luck. I think good things are coming for you big time. You are a huge inspiration.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming on.
It's been absolute pleasure, Hannah, and I've loved it.
You got a great sense of crisp flavours.
Yeah, can I have that bag?
No, you can't. Until next time. Thank you for listening. If you love what you hear, please subscribe and review. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram @CrazySexyFood and check out the Crazy Sexy Food YouTube channel. Until next time, bye.